Hi everyone, it's Stéphane Compin. We are live for the second episode today, and I'm joined by Sylvie from Simply London, a relocation company based in the UK. Sylvie, I really appreciate that you accepted the invitation to be my guest today on the podcast.
Pleasure.
Could you tell me a bit about yourself and what you are doing actually in your business life?
Sure. So I run Simply London, as you said, a relocation agency based in London, as it says. And very classically for the industry, we help expatriates who are looking to move to London, and in particular families, because the schools topic and system is very difficult to navigate. So we help a lot of families find the right schools, apply for the schools, and secure places in schools in London, and lots of other things as of utilities, bank accounts, internet connections, which these days are extremely important. In fact, almost more important than electricity and gas for these families and individuals moving to London.
Great. And what decided you to become an entrepreneur, and why the mobility industry? Why did you come into relocation?
Sure. So I have a background of a corporate career. So I've worked in marketing for approximately 15 years in various international groups. I moved myself in a number of countries. Working in marketing, I was always in a back office function, and I really was looking forward to having a frontline role, in touch directly with customers, pleasing customers, serving customers, enduring sometimes customers, yeah, I have to say. But it was something which I was really keen to go back to, in a sense, being on the front line of helping others.
Yeah, and how did you end up in London? And did you move to London to open your company, or
So I moved to London, no, for a corporate. One of the corporate jobs I had, I was part of their management program to send people abroad for 3 years, which I did. And after 3 years, I did not return to where I had come from because I loved it so much in London. And then I worked for other companies in London, and that's only later that I actually decided to jump into becoming an entrepreneur. And to come back to your question earlier as to why the mobility industry, it was really about using the experience which I had from moving in different countries, which wasn't very good most of the time because I had no support mostly. So I wanted to actually give people a different experience from the other one, from the one I had. And also working in relocation in London enabled me to share my passion for what is the most beautiful city in the world, I will say unashamedly. And so I can do this all day long, just share it with other people and get them to set up a life that they will love in London.
And wasn't it difficult to set up your own company in the relocation without, knowing anything about, except for you moving, without knowing anything about the industry and never being an entrepreneur before?
Absolutely. So it was a double challenge in a way to set up your own business. How do you do that? And setting up is not that difficult. Growing it is,
Yeah.
and to a scale that makes sense and brings some profit from which you live as an entrepreneur. And then I had no contact whatsoever in the mobility industry. I had no HR people I knew, for example, I could have reached out to. So it was definitely difficult, but we took a different route at the time, and we still do, in a sense. So we took the digital route, which is that many of our customers actually come from the web, the internet. So we set up, it took us a long time to set up, a good website that would attract footfall on the internet, etc. And that's how we sort of got into it. And then we expanded our network in the mobility industry when we were settled enough, and in a sense we felt that were good enough in a sense to sort of present our services to the wider mobility industry.
But it's interesting how you did that. What I'm wondering is how did you get your first customers? Because you were only on the internet, you had a good website, but very often it's not enough to attract people. Did you do any mailing campaign? Did you knock on doors? Did you go on conferences, things like that, to promote your company?
So the lever we used at the beginning was the schools. So people researching schools in London, and that's how we got them to come to us on our website, because we were giving out a lot of information, free information about schools, and that's how they would discover that there are actually people who can help them for the schools and also for the home, etc. That's how we started, and that's still partly how we function, really. And that's why I was mentioning the families to start with, which is really a core part of our business, of our clients, because the schools are the first thing that people will research online when they are planning their relocation, their family relocation.
It's interesting because from all the people I know in the industry, you are kind of very specific, meaning that a lot of your customers are private individuals, which is very rare in our industry, where mostly people work with corporate accounts or with RMCs or with colleagues overseas. In your case, you work with direct customers that where basically, I suppose, their company is not paying for any assistance there. They are paying themselves, and they need support in London to settle in.
Correct, absolutely. And it's actually, I think, a bigger market than most people might assume. Now, I also think that London is quite specific because it attracts so many people generally. And out of that, a number of them are with children, and a number of them have the ability to afford relocation services or might be getting a lump sum from their employer, which is also a case which is more and more frequent. But yes, we're quite special. We found our niche in a sense with that type of clients and the way we attract them. Obviously, we've expanded to now serving companies and their employees. But I guess we're quite proud to have built this from scratch and have found really where we find ourselves most useful for people. And people are, in a sense, grateful for the fact that these services exist, particularly for the British capital, which, as I said before, is extremely difficult for the school system, in particular for the state schools, so the public schools, as most of the rest of the world would describe them. So it's quite good to be able to help these people.
And how long did it take you to have enough customers, enough revenue to support your company? Were you alone, or did you set up the company with somebody else?
So I did set it up with someone else, and then so there's two of us at the beginning. Certainly not enough to sustain ourselves entirely. So I started by keeping my job on the side, and then 2 years later, that's how long it took, I resigned and I jumped into the water. I was terrified, but I had to do it. And then we had another person come on board, I think a year later. And now we work with some people who work for us, like very often as freelance people, but for quite a long time. So I consider them, in a sense, employees in the sense that, they know exactly how we work and how we want to approach clients, etc. So I would say 3 years is what it took to actually get to a level where I could say, yes, I run a business in a sense and I live from it. So I don't know if it's long, if it's short. To me, it looked very long, but equally.
I think most businesses, it takes at least 2-3 years to have a solid basis to be able to live on, and the fact that you were able to continue working as an employee while developing your business is interesting as well, and it must have been a bit difficult at the beginning just to manage the two.
It was, and I had to. there were two things. There was the time that you need to spend on it, and the sort of mental energy, which you have to divide between your normal job and then the other one. But I think if you're inspired, if you're really passionate about what you are building, you will find the time, you will find the energy. And it's just incredible the energy, that the drive that it gives when you really, like, you know, you're on something, onto something. This is what you have to do, and then the rest is just easy, in a sense.
That's great. And what are the things that you didn't expect when you started your journey as an entrepreneur, and how difficult it was to you know, set it up?
So for me, two things I didn't expect. The pace of change. I was expecting to set it up and sort of not relax after that, but sort of, you know, say, well, this is set up, and now we're going to continue to grow it a little bit, but, you know, it's fine, it's set up. Well, that basis never doesn't exist. Once you've actually set up something, you have to either set up something else or go back to what you've set up and change it, because things change, people change. That's one thing I didn't expect. Equally, that's one thing which is super interesting, because you're challenged all the time by your customers, by your competitors, by your suppliers. So it makes it even more interesting than I thought.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was, sorry, yeah.
No, I'm just saying that you set yourself new steps as well. You know, you've reached a certain point.
All the time.
And of course, you're, like you said, you are pushed by the competition, by the technology. And at one point you say, okay, I've reached a level which I thought, you know, 1 year ago was what I wanted to reach. And then once you reach it, you said, well, maybe I should go further than that, or change, you know, way, offer new services, things like that.
Absolutely. But I think exactly that makes the difference between a sustainable business in the long term and one which isn't. Because if you stop there at what you had as a goal originally, you will survive for some time, even maybe some years. But to last for decades, for example, if that's your purpose, you have to continuously look at what's next.
Reinvent yourself all the time.
Absolutely, all the time. And so in a sense, I find it sometimes quite exhausting, because I would like to have a day in my life where I can rest and think I've done everything right for now. But equally, it is just so challenging and so interesting. So that's even better than I expected, in a sense.
Right. And yeah, you were talking about, I stopped you, but you were talking about
a second thing which I didn't expect is Brexit. And I'm not going to go into any personal opinions about it, but what I took out of it is that no industry is ever sheltered from political, economical, social context changes. Even the mobility industry, which is clearly a growing industry because talent moves from one place to the other in the world these days, even more than it was 20 or 30 years ago. But you are never sheltered from things that you have no control of, even if you think you are protected by market needs, etc. So you have to always be ready for the worst, and the current pandemic is exactly the same. You know, how can you make it an opportunity for your business and also for yourself as a person? I was certainly not expecting Brexit when I set up my business. It's the last thing I expected, and when it happened, I had a sheer moment of panic, and I thought, this is it, it's over. Nobody's going to want to move to London or to the UK anymore. That lasted for a few hours, and then after that I said to myself, well, you have to make something out of it. So we actually made some changes with additional services at the time, departure services being one of them. You know, you have to catch the opportunity when it comes. We changed other things, etc. We used the time where it was a bit more quiet to make improvements to the business, and out of it we actually came stronger, definitely. We also lost a few competitors on the way. Sorry, but in a sense, if you come out, if the market might be shrinking, but if your market share increases, then actually... Which
is actually more or less what's happening now as well.
Right.
Like you said, you need to use the time. It's what we did in our companies, just to use the time to review our processes, you know, streamline the procedures and so on. And it's why it's important to use the time properly, and to be ready to when things are starting again, and to be ahead of the competition when you know, people are going to move again.
So I'm making, in regard to the current situation, I am making it my goal to come out of it with having used the time that is given to us, in a sense, through the more quiet time. To we are losing sales. That's very clear, to what they would have been had there not been any pandemic. But my goal is to actually come out with such an improvement to the business that we will, within a few months, actually gather more sales than what we've lost in that time of pandemic. And I make it a duty to myself and to the business to do that. So right now is not a time to rest. Quite on the contrary, I've never worked that hard in the background of the business. So that after, yeah.
Same for me. I was, I thought, okay, we'll have time at home, and I'll have time to do things in my house and think. But in reality, I've never worked so much. It's incredible working on different projects and preparing for the end of the lockdown, and that's interesting. And I think you're right. It's the only way to survive and to be able to maintain your business in the right track.
Also, I'm assuming not all competitors will do that. For example, some may. So part of your sort of range of competitors might come out stronger, like you, and others won't. And so the gap will be bigger, which hopefully will be positive for us. So you have to use these opportunities exactly for that purpose.
Great. You talked about the Brexit and the coronavirus, which are two challenges. But what in your career, what was the biggest challenge that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
So the biggest challenge I faced in my career was that I've worked for a while for a company that didn't have the ethics I wanted to live by and work by. So my challenge was, what shall I do? Am I staying and just keeping oblivious to that? Is it that important? Do I just stay in my own bubble in the office and talk to the people I work with, ignoring the rest of that environment? But in the end, so it was very challenging mentally and morally, mainly, because I live by very strong ethics. And there were about the behavior to customers and employees, which were equally bad. And so what I did was actually, that is when I decided to set up my business. So I am very grateful for that experience, because without it, I don't think I would be where I am today. I needed that kick to really say, no, I'm really fed up and I cannot live and work by that. It also did help me to set up the ethics and the rules, or the philosophy that we use at Simply London, which is extremely important to me. And so all the team, being employees or external people, all work by these ethics and live by them. Generally, I don't train people. We just connect more easily, and for me it's really important to sense that this is a shared philosophy. So this is very strongly in the philosophy of Simply London, to live and work by these ethics, and that's treating your customers a certain way, treating your suppliers a certain way, and certainly treating your employees, your biggest asset, a certain way.
I completely relate to that, because basically it's more or less the same path I followed, working in a company, in an environment that wasn't the one I wanted to, where I wanted to be, without the ethics I wanted, and ended up setting up my company and working around building around ethic, around the company culture, relation with clients, with suppliers, with accounts, to be sure that we work in the same way and for the benefit of everybody. And yeah, what you said is really interesting, because sometimes it can be very difficult and challenging when you have an ethic to be working for a company that doesn't match who you are.
Exactly that. And then asking yourself, because you're not necessarily always very aware, especially if you're a bit younger, you know, of who you are and who you're not. And I think these experiences enable you to really understand what's important to you and what might not be. And then to set up a business according to these things is huge. It's a huge luck. It's a huge chance in life, definitely opportunity.
Right. And what is one thing that you would have wanted to know when you started your journey as an entrepreneur? Something that you didn't know when you started, and then you wish you had known to help you set up your business and develop it?
So I think it would have been useful to know that the only thing you know is that the only thing that is sure is that everything is uncertain. Do not count on anything, be it, for example, as we were saying, a political context, etc., or people's behavior being the same for years, online or in marketing or things like that. Change is the only thing that is certain. It probably would have helped me mentally a lot at the beginning. But I learned my lessons through the events that I have been, put through on the road. So that for me is that thing about uncertainty and change.
Yeah, you're right, because on our side, we started, January, February until mid-March was one of the best start of the year we had since we opened the company. And, suddenly it just stopped from one day to the other. And like you said, you couldn't expect it. And then you arrived in uncertainty, and you need to overcome it to be ready to start again when everything will kind of go back to normal.
Yes, and I think because I'm lucky to have been through Brexit and the pandemic, I now have a certain number of tools in my head to actually deal with uncertainty, whatever type of uncertainty it is. So, and it's very basic things like, assessing the situation, what is in my control, what isn't, what can I do, what can I not do, etc. So it's more a method of approaching uncertainty, which first drives your energy into something positive, analytical, action points, etc., rather than focusing on the fact that you don't know. And that is now really helpful. So I'm ready, as far as I can, for for any other hurdles that the world might want to throw at us in the meantime.
Well, and also the fact that like us, you are not such a big relocation company makes you more agile to adapt to any change in the environment. You can, launch a new product, suppress one, and be able to react more quickly than bigger corporation.
Yes. So, for example, with Brexit, I was mentioning the departure service which we launched, and we did it in 4 hours. And at the time, I did smile because having, a corporate background, I thought, well, this obviously would have been totally impossible with my previous employers. But now I can just do it, and I set it up online, etc. Done. And that's a huge relief, in a sense, and opportunity to be able to do that. That's one of the major perks of being, an entrepreneur and your own boss, and agile, as you say.
Cool. What is your biggest failure, if you had any, and how you overcame it, how it helped you for your life now as an entrepreneur, whether it was when you started as an entrepreneur or maybe before when you were working for the corporate world?
So my biggest failure was, and still is, in a sense, to not recognize early enough when some people who are involved in the business somehow are not good anymore for the business. There are phases where these people can be excellent for the business, and then they're not anymore, and you don't realize it. It's a bit like a relationship. You're sort of on the way down, but because you're still looking at the past, which was, fantastic, etc., and you might even like these people personally, which makes it even more difficult. But actually, they're hampering you or hampering the business from moving forward at the pace that you might want to have. And I've failed to recognize it early enough and to act on it, which doesn't mean that, if somebody, annoys me, I'm going to say goodbye to that person the next day. But it's more about having, again, the tools in my head to sort of assess the situation on a non-emotional level as well. I am here, I have a duty towards the business, which is now, the business is not me, it's an entity in itself. And so my duty as a director and as a founder is to keep it going. And that duty does imply sometimes to not keep some people on board, and it can be people helping you, it can be even suppliers, etc. So that's one major thing that I failed on. I sometimes still do, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's difficult because you like you said, you might have a relationship, a friendship with that person, which make it difficult to take the decision that that person shouldn't work for your company anymore, because maybe the person was the perfect match at a certain point, but now because of the whole situation, because of the company evolving, the mentality evolving, the tools changing, that person is just pulling you backwards instead of helping the company to grow. And it's a difficult situation that I think every manager, every entrepreneur will have at one point in their career.
Absolutely, and we go back to that topic of change. This comes because things change, businesses change, customers change, so your business is evolving, and there might be people or even businesses that work with you that don't evolve the same way, and that's fine, but it's your duty as a business owner to recognize that early enough, so it doesn't actually make you lose business because of that. In the end, that's what it's about.
On a more personal side, do you have a passion that you normally don't share with people, things that you do outside of work that enable you to relax or to focus on other things?
Yes, so what I don't share with my team is, well, they know it, but obviously I wouldn't impose it on them. I'm a DJ in my hobby time. So obviously I don't play music in the office. That's what I've been. So yes, I love DJing for parties, just getting people to dance, dancing
That's
myself
funny.
as well. And yeah, so that's one of my ways to generally indulge into my music passion.
And during the lockdown, did you open your window, go on the balcony?
I did hesitate at some point.
I've seen that in Paris, I think, or
yes.
in Spain, in Italy, DJs, mixing on their balcony. So do you do that?
Well, my neighbors have children, so I was a bit hesitant because they might, I don't know, have been trying to sleep, for example, at the time. And I was concerned because I live in a large residential building that the building manager would actually not be happy with the noise level.
It's a special situation, maybe people would be happy that, you are there to have a bit of entertainment.
Very true. So I haven't done it yet, but unfortunately there is still time for that.
Just coming back to maybe you can give give a few words on the project you launched, I think maybe 2 years ago now, of an international network, French speaking international network.
Sure. So the idea came about because I got to meet a number of other relocation businesses in other countries outside of France, with French speaking or French owners. And what really did strike me at the time is that all of these people had the same sense of service to clients, quality of service, also the passion for their city or their country where they were residents or even sometimes citizens, but still with the French roots and understanding of what French clients could expect when they move abroad, with sometimes some funny moments when we realize that we all have the same sort of client behaviors and challenges sometimes. And I thought, with an increasing mobile population generally, and certainly also from France or French-speaking countries, and French people being better at speaking English, and so I think more daring in their destinations sometimes around the world for mobility. Clearly, this is a growing market, which I thought we could serve with that unique selling proposition that, imagine, you're moving from France to Vietnam, for example, for an exotic destination for Europeans. How nice would that be if somebody who is French or French speaking actually taking care of, advising you on where to live, finding your house for your family, the school, but all of this with the French language, and more importantly, I think the French culture background, where that person is then able to sort of compare things in their country to what you come from in France.
Yeah.
And so that's the purpose of the network, is that we're able to offer that service pretty much everywhere around the world. High quality service delivered by people who understand your culture and your language. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's great. And can you just give us the name of the network?
Yes, sorry. It's called Bienvenue, which I think even the Brits would know what it means, which means welcome.
That's great. That was a good name. Lastly, can you give us 2 or 3 tips or advice? To our listeners wanting to launch their own business, or to maybe work in the relocation business. What would be your advice?
So my advice on generally on launching a business, you really need 3 things. You need to be passionate about what your business is about. Absolutely essential. Otherwise, it won't last. You need to be good at it, or becoming good at it, because you can be super passionate. If you're crap at it, it's not going to work either, because people are going to see it. And number 3, you have to believe in it. And maybe that's also one thing which has really surprised me, the strength of my own belief in what I'm doing, despite all the challenges. And I've only mentioned 2 of them during this conversation. There has been many others, not that big as Brexit or a pandemic, but where sometimes I have thought, is this a sign that I should be stopping? And I've had this question in my head so many times. But still, the next day, I wake up every day with that fire in myself, because I really believe in what we're doing. So once you have found your niche, and you're good at it, then things are going to roll, with lots of work in the background, let's be clear. But that passion, that belief, are really important. And being good, or having a good team. You don't have to be good at everything. In fact, you shouldn't, in a sense, but you have to surround yourself with people who deliver what you want. For me, that these are the really important things. In relation to relocation, there's only one word. It's about people. So you have to be to care about people to be able to work in this industry. We have difficult clients, we have challenging clients, we have lovely clients, and they can be both sometimes at the same time. So you are going to be confronted with all of the range of human emotions. People are in stressful situations. So you have to be motivated again by that fire inside yourself, that you're doing something good for people, who are in stressful situations, and you're trying to remove that stress as much as possible. But you have to be caring. And that, for me, that's the main thing about mobility. Don't go in there if it's not what you care about. You might love numbers. That's fine. There is no judgment as to what you like, what you don't like. But if you only like numbers and not people, you shouldn't be in mobility.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. It's really a business about people, caring for people, and if you don't put yourself in the shoes of your customers, then it's impossible to be happy and to perform in this business. You need to understand that.
And clients will see it very quickly.
I agree.
So because sometimes we have clients coming to us later on and saying, for example, we're changing relocation provider because the previous one, they didn't look like they cared about our employees. That's a no-go in that industry. You cannot not care. So that's, people is just number one.
Yeah, I've heard it it happens sometime in bigger companies, relocation companies, where you have a lot of consultants, and sometimes people are maybe less motivated about their customer than when we are in a smaller company, more family type company than like you have.
Well, for example, we don't have numbers for our clients. We know when we talk about them, we call them by their names. I don't know if that's the case in every company, but this is Mr., Mrs., or the first name, but that's how we talk about them. And then there's always some context, where are they coming from? Oh yes, do you have children? So there's always, when we talk about them, we first start by talking about the situation and who they are and what they're looking for. If you get down to just a file or something to tick, that's the end of your service. That's not service.
Cool. Just last question. Did you? I mean, you have a lot of celebrities and well-known people in London. Did you move any or help to relocate any celebrity in London that you can talk of?
Not that I can talk of, but I was very lucky to meet one of the most celebrated singers in France. I think he's elected each year as the favorite celebrity in France, and absolutely delightful person, by the way. In reality, I was so nervous. It was like going on a date. But no, yes, we've had celebrities sometimes in their world. So we've seen as of business celebrities or people high up in very, very large companies. And interestingly, we might have expectations of how people will behave depending on their celebrity status or position in a company, but usually we're proven wrong, in the sense that you can never know how somebody is going actually to behave towards a service provider, for example.
Yeah, so, and sometimes it can change in the middle of the relocation process, where people
that as
are
well.
stressed, they can be aggressive, and you're telling yourself it's going to be difficult, and then when you start to reassure them and show them that you are the right person to help them, then suddenly you see that their attitude is changing, and that it happened to us a lot of time where at the end they are really grateful, and they started being very difficult, and we thought, wow, it's going to be a nightmare, but it ended up being our best marketing tool on the market.
Advocate, exactly, because you've turned them around we go back to showing that you care as well. And they must also know somehow that they're not maybe behaving in the nicest way, and if you're still remaining professional and focused on what your objective is and not being sort of blinded by the way they communicate with you, etc., then I think that's how you win them over. And yes, you're right, they will be your biggest advocates.
Yeah, we even had some customers writing emails on the phone saying, we are really sorry, we were not nice at all, we didn't talk to you properly, we were stressed, and so on. So yeah, that's interesting. That's human nature anyway.
Exactly, and you have to be ready, for that as well. And it's not always pleasant. We all smile, but we have
the job.
Yeah, we have our sleepless nights over, how a customer has reacted or will react, or etc. But in the end, remain professional. Know your ethics again. And it can also mean sometimes to tell people when they're not behaving properly to your team.
Yeah,
it can go that far, because there are certain things we will accept and certain things I won't accept for my team. And I am ready to lose a customer if it goes beyond what I find acceptable. And having that boundary in my head is very useful, because I know how far I will let things happen.
Yeah.
And I also know when I will act, and that's being ready to sort of say.
Coming back to what you were saying before, the ethic. You set up your company around an ethic, and again, if the customer is not part of the ethic because the way he's behaving doesn't correspond, and the customer is going too far, I totally agree that at one point maybe you should say stop, or call the HR if it's somebody working for a corporation, saying it's gone too far. You need also to protect your team.
Exactly. And you have to show that you value your team to the point where you are ready to lose a client if your team is not treated properly. That's really important. It doesn't happen very often, but I also think that people can feel it when you are ready actually to lose them. It's like in a relationship. It's exactly the same. That gives you a certain leverage in a sense, because they sense that you're ready to go anyway. So it's their choice, not
You're
yours.
right.
So you're right, ethics covers customers as well, as strange as it sounds. I guess for us, when it's a private client, strategically it's less dangerous in a sense,
Yes,
because if we lose a private client, that's fine. But we have done it in the past where we said, sorry, we can't deliver the service under these conditions, etc. Very sorry, but we can't continue. And I think that it shows the value you put on also delivering a quality service. And sometimes it isn't possible because of the client. It happens.
All right. Okay. If our listeners wants to connect with you and be in contact, what is the best way to do that? We'll put a note at the bottom of the podcast. What is the best way? LinkedIn, I suppose.
Absolutely, LinkedIn, the website. We have all sorts of contact details on there, chat function, etc. But yes, LinkedIn, definitely, I'm on there. I look forward to any conversation about these very interesting topics.
Great. Thanks a lot for joining the podcast, Sylvie.
Thank you, Stefan.
Much appreciated, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.